everyone. I am going to explain phase 6 today. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through the PowerPoint. It's posted so you can look at it if you need to. But I'm going to go step by step on how to do phase 6, which is analyzing the data. So hopefully at this point, you've gotten your surveys, you've sent them out, and you've gotten all your data. Now you need to start analyzing that data and creating charts and graphs and telling the reader what your data says. So that's what I'm going to work through step by step today. Okay, it's probably something you've never done before, so it's going to maybe be a little confusing. Most of your writing that you've already done is the phase 3, so you've done a lot of that writing. So now the most important part is to figure out how to do this data analysis, and it may be harder just because you've never done it before, but it's less writing. So if that makes you feel any better. So that's basically what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about this phase 6. So when we're talking about data collection, remember that we first had to identify what information we wanted to get information about. And then we developed our tool, which was our survey. Then we sent our survey out and we collected all the data. And then now we have to analyze that data. So that's the part that I'm going to talk about this week. So the first thing we have to do is understand data management. So we have all these surveys and we have to figure out how we're going to manage them and interpret them. So data management is taking that raw data, those survey results, and putting them in some format that we can interpret what they're saying, and we can kind of give an analysis of what they are telling us. So that is basically what we're doing with data management this week. So the first thing you need to do is you need to take all your surveys and give them some sort of numbers. So if you did longhand, you could actually write on them numbers. If they're on a SurveyMonkey or Google Docs, somehow you have to be able to identify what's survey 1, what's survey 2, what's survey 3. They may have done that for you automatically. If you used a program, they probably gave them numbers already, but you need to have some way of identifying each specific survey and which one you're looking at. Okay, so that's the first thing. You want to make sure each survey has its own number. Then what you're going to do is you're going to create a master chart of all of that information. So you want some of the programs do this for you, like SurveyMonkey and things like that. They create this master chart. If not, you're going to have to use Excel and create a master chart. If you don't know how to use Excel, YouTube is your friend. So you want to YouTube it and watch videos to show you how to do your axes and how to input your information, okay? But basically it's going to be somewhat like this. So your survey numbers are all going to be down on the left, and then across are the questions on your survey. So question 1 was age, 2 was race, 3 was gender, 4 was your first question where they had to use the scale on your topic, 5 is your next question. And you're just going to make this master chart and then fill in the information for each survey. So survey 1, the person was 29, they were Caucasian, they were female, they answered 3, and then they answered 4. So you just have to put all of that data into one large chart for all your surveys. So you should have somewhere between 15 and 20 surveys, most likely. So you're going to have 1 through 15 or 1 through 20 going down, and then all your questions across. That's why I didn't want you to have more than 10 questions. That's why I didn't want you to do a lot more than 20. So you didn't have too much, it wasn't too overwhelming. So you're going to make this master chart. Now, N is the number of total survey. So you want to tell the reader what your N number is. That's just how many surveys you actually collected. So if it's 15, your N is 15. If you've got 18, your N is 18. So just write that number on that chart. So this is the chart for all of your information, okay? So this will ultimately be attached at the end as an appendix to your final paper. So we're not going to put this in the middle of the paper, but you're going to refer to it in your paper and say, see data chart or see appendix D or whatever letter you give it. And then this chart is going to go into your final paper as an appendix. So you want to be able to do that. You're going to just cut it and paste it right into your paper. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take the big chart and you're going to make mini charts. So you're going to make one small chart for each of your questions. So you'll end up with, if you have 10 questions, you'll have, a lot of you did 9 questions because you did one general summary question. You can't do a chart for that. But anything you can do a chart, you're going to do a smaller chart. And this one's easy because then you have your age down here and then how many surveys you got for each of those age groups. So when I look at this, I had 18 through 25, I had 2 surveys. 26 through 35, I had 2 surveys. 36 through 50, I had 1. So you're going to make this little mini chart for each question. So each question is going to have a mini chart. This is an example of the race one. So I had 3 Caucasian, 2 African-American, 1 Hispanic. You can get that all from the master chart that you made because it's all on there. Once you make that master chart, the individual charts aren't as important because you can then just look at the master chart for all of the information that you need. This is what one of your general questions would going to be. So we did the scale. This would be a small chart that you would use for that scale type of question. So my question is abortion should be illegal. And then this was my scale, strongly agree, disagree, neutral, disagree. And then how many answered on each of those things. So you have to kind of calculate it and then figure out what your numbers would be for each of those responses. Now, once you have all of that information in these little mini charts, those mini charts are also going to be attached to your paper as an appendix. You need to turn those little charts into a visual way to display it, okay? So we need to summarize this and turn it into a way that can visually be presented to the audience that's reading your paper. How are you going to do that? You're going to make it into some sort of a graph. So you can choose what kind of graph you want. You could do a pie chart, you could do a bar graph, you could do a line chart, whatever you want. Once you created it in Excel, if you did it in Excel, it will convert it to pie charts or bar graphs or line graphs for you. Again, if you don't really know how to do that, watch a video on YouTube and it will show you how to take your chart that you already made and it will just convert it for you into these graphs. And then these are the graphs that are going to be part of the actual paper. So the charts are going to be appendixes, but within your paper, you're going to include these graphs. So I have some examples to show you. So this is a line one that I did, or a bar one that I did for age. So it shows you, how many you had at each age group. I did a line for ethnicity, so you can kind of see that example. A lot of people do the pie chart. So if you do pie charts, that's perfectly fine, because that's what a lot of people end up doing visually. It's totally up to you what you feel most comfortable with. I don't have a preference, but I have noticed a lot of people stick with the pie graphs. If you do this, remember you have to have your keys so everybody knows which one is which and you know what information is on each, okay? So make sure you include that. But you can do any way you want. I don't really mind which one you do, but these are going to be actually merged into your actual paper. You're going to actually cut them and paste them into your actual paper. Okay. So, and that's what this is saying. You're going to cut and paste them into your paper. So once you create it, you're going to want to, be able to copy it and paste it right into the paper. Now, and make sure you have this key so everybody knows what you need. Now, so we have read the data. Now we need to, and we've created our graphs. Now we need to tell the readers in words what this information is telling us. So you're going to paste the graph in there, and then in a small paragraph underneath each graph, you're going to explain what this graph is saying in words. So you're going to say what the chart says overall. How does this relate to your hypothesis? And how did the variables affect this? Now, for the variable ones, you can't say that because they're just basic gathering information. So in the variable ones, you're just going to say, I had this many surveys, this many were men, this many female. I wish I had more male, or I wish I had more female. Just something short about what your data is. These 3 things are when you get to the specific questions on your topic. So what does the chart say overall? How does that relate to your hypothesis? So, what does this specific question tell you about what you thought in your hypothesis? And when you look, how did the variables affect it? Did more women than men give a 3? So women pick 3, men pick 5. So kind of point out, how did the variables affect it? Did race? Did most of the one race, black pick 1 and white pick 5? Like, how how does the variables affect the choices? And you can do that by looking at your big chart. You can go through, and people that identified as Black, you can go and say, oh, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, right? Or maybe they were all 1, 4, 3, 2. And then you could say race didn't really have any factor on it at all. It didn't affect it because people had all different answers in different races. Okay. So you just need to look at that and kind of interpret that data and tell me what it says. So 3 things in that little paragraph after the graph. What does it say? How does it affect your hypothesis? And how are the variables and a factor in those responses? And you're going to write that in a paragraph. Okay. So, and then this is what it's going to look like. So you'll have your question, write what the question is, paste your graph with the key, and then you're going to write a little paragraph. What does the chart say? How does it relate to your hypothesis? How do the variables affect it? So this is an example of what it would look like. After reviewing the data, it appears people strongly agree with making abortion illegal. In fact, over a majority was either strongly agree, with the higher being strongly agree. Few people were neutral. Only about 23 disagreed. This matches my hypothesis because blah, 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 blah. It appears that more males than females agreed while more females disagreed. So that's what your little mini paragraph is going to be. It's just a couple sentences. Okay. And then you go on to the next question. So once you do each individual question, then the last part is looking at it as a whole. So first we're going to look at the trees, the small things individually. And then at the end, we want to look at the big picture. So overall, when you look at all the data as a whole, what are your conclusions on your data? Overall, what did people think about your topic? Overall, did the variables have an effect? Not just on one individual question, did it have an effect overall? And how does it overall relate to your hypothesis? Because one question could relate one way to your hypothesis, but the data as a whole could really be different, okay? So those are the things you want to consider. So you want to look at this big chart. That's why you're making the big chart, because you're going to look at it and see overall, what is it telling you, okay? Don't forget to include analysis of the effects of the variables. That's one of the things I talked about. Remember, the variables are age, race, gender, things like that. And what do they tell us? So this is just an example. More younger people scored higher than or neutral than older. So just assess how you think the variables affected your answer. And then finally, you're going to draw conclusions. After evaluating all of the data, what is your thoughts on the hypothesis? One of the things I want to point out is, if your data does not support your hypothesis, that does not affect your grade. So don't panic or freak out that, oh my God, I was completely wrong. My hypothesis is wrong. That is what this is for. You're testing your hypothesis. So it being wrong is not a bad thing. It's just showing you that you would have a different hypothesis. So don't freak out. You could say my data is completely different than what I thought my hypothesis was. Okay. And go back and look at your literary review. Does your data support the information you have in your literary review? You know, or is the literary review different than what you received? And talk a little bit about that. Okay, so I just gave you some examples of what your final conclusions were going to look like. So that's what these are. Okay, now just a couple things. We've talked a lot about the ethics of data analysis. Don't make things up. Use true data. You're learning. So make sure you're using it and you're not just making things up. Don't plagiarize anything from other people. And that's it. I know this is a new skill, and it's probably something you've never done before, so it may be confusing. Please reach out to me and send me an email if you have any questions. I'll be more than glad to sit down with you and meet with you and go through this step by step. I think this is the hardest part of the paper just because you've never done it before, but it's not. Once you get the hang of it, it will go very quickly. You may think, oh my gosh, there's 10 questions, but it actually goes quickly once you learn the process. It's just that initial learning the process that's going to take you a few minutes. So reach out if you have any questions. I'll be happy to work with you, and we can Zoom or call on the phone or whatever works best for you. So please just let me know what if you have any questions. So I will talk to you soon.